All right, so one thing we can actually do is when we have a country selected, we can click on the country's name and it'll give us a breakdown of how many people are actually infected in that country. So you can see, even though this virus has originated in Egypt, only a tiny fraction of people have actually been infected with it. So it's going to be a while before anyone becomes aware of this thing's existence, which is a good thing for us in terms of trying to develop it and turn it into something a little bit more frightening. So as you can see now, hundreds of people have been infected with our virus, and it's just kind of letting us know as we reach these different milestones what's up with that. One of the things about viruses versus, say, bacteria is they tend to mutate more frequently, and as you noted at the beginning, I actually increased the probability of that by equipping that gene that I had unlocked from my previous playthrough. So you can see our virus has already mutated and developed a symptom. So insomnia is actually not a very harsh symptom. It's generally on the scale of things is considered pretty mild as far as the game is concerned. So that's basically just something we got for free without having to spend DNA on it, but we do have to be a little bit careful and keep an eye on what symptoms manifest themselves in the virus, because if the virus gets too scary too quickly, that'll bring it to everybody's attention too soon and we won't get the chance to spread it properly. Where that comes into play in particular is if we go and look at the DNA chart again. You can see this tab actually is where we see the symptoms. So you can see now we got this insomnia symptom for free, and you can see in the description of it, it just creates an inability to sleep, makes people irritable and less productive, but it doesn't necessarily do anything that's going to cause people to get panicky about the fact that they have this symptom. But you can see as you go deeper into the grid here, the symptoms become more severe, right? So if we get to paranoia, if a bunch of people start becoming paranoid for no other apparent reason, that might cause the scientific community to take interest in what's happening there. So we kind of have to be careful not to trigger anything too crazy too early on in the game. So we're just going to go ahead and keep collecting DNA. Right now, most of the countries around Egypt are a similar climate. If I click on, say, any of these other countries, you'll notice that they're all kind of warm climate, right? So you see if I mouse over here, it's a hot country, which means that the virus is going to spread very easily to these places. But at a certain point, we're going to get to places like, say, Russia or the former Soviet Union, which is a cold country. And as a result, if the virus hasn't evolved or adapted to suit those conditions, it won't be able to survive in that part of the world and it won't be able to infect people there. So at a certain point, we're going to have to look at spending some of this DNA to change some of the characteristics of the virus to make it spread more effectively to other parts of the world. And that's something we may want to think about doing here pretty soon, once we see the virus starting to spread out and reach places that are a different climate than where it started. And of course, if you started the game in a cold part of the world, you'd have to do the opposite and make the virus better suited to a warm environment. It really just depends on how you start the game and how things progress as to what you have to do in what order. Alright, so we've now officially affected thousands of people. That's pretty cool. Let's take a look at our country of origin. Notice that even in Egypt, though, we still have a very small percentage of people infected. So the reason we're infecting thousands of people is more so because it's spreading than because it's actually getting deeply entrenched in any one particular area. Delicious DNA. Alright, so anemia symptom has been created again for free. We didn't have to spend any DNA on that, and that's just because the virus again has a tendency to mutate more rapidly than other disease types. But if we go and look at the chart again, you can see the symptoms associated with anemia: decrease in red blood cells or hemoglobin in the blood can lead to hypoxia in the organs. Again, This is a little bit more of a warning sign, but not as severe as, say, the next thing on the chain, which would be your hemophilia, which, as we know, is not something that anybody is going to let slide. So I think we're still doing a pretty good job of flying under the radar, but I do think we want to look at hardying up the virus a little bit so that it can spread as quickly as possible. And the way we're going to do that is to go under the abilities tab in this DNA section, and we're going to start unlocking some of these cold climate abilities. So cold resistance 1, pathogen evolves to withstand cold temperatures and climates. So let's go ahead and pop that with some of our extra DNA that we've acquired and see how that plays out. One thing I've noticed about this game is that you don't want to evolve too much too fast, because that has a tendency to trigger things more quickly than they otherwise would happen. I think it's generally a good idea to only activate one evolution at a time and really see what the result of that is before you go gung-ho and just start spraying DNA everywhere. Phrasing, but you know what I'm saying. Alright, so we've actually spread pretty far. You can see every time we spread to a new country, we get that plague symbol on it. And when you pop that bubble, that officially triggers the spread of the contagion to that part of the world. You get a little bit of bonus DNA for that. Where you really get the big DNA chunks is from those actual DNA strand bubbles that appear once a place has been infected for a while. As you can see here, we're infecting new places, getting more DNA. Let's take a quick look at Egypt. See, now we're actually starting to get a fairly significant little sliver of the pie here. It's actually measurable. We've got 2% of the population infected in our country of origin. So I think another thing we probably want to look at some point here. Okay, so this is going to be the problem with this virus, is it's going to mutate much faster than what I'm accustomed to from the bacteria. So the hemophilia symptom has been enabled automatically for us. And what that means is that we're really going to have to get on the ball in terms of spreading this thing. Because when you look at the symptoms associated with hemophilia, you're talking about the immune system producing inhibitors that destroy factor VIII, preventing blood clotting, and this is also going to increase the infectivity of the plague. That's a symptom that's not going to go ignored for very long, so we have to do everything we can to get this thing spreading as quickly as possible. So what we're going to do is actually spend some of our surplus DNA to make this thing transmit through water, which will get it going on boats. We're also going to make it transmit through livestock, which will get it spreading in rural areas. And I think that's about all we have DNA for at the moment, but I think those two things will help us out quite a bit in terms of spreading this thing.